Assalamu alaikum. Today we will talk about how to select data from database in ASP.NET using C#. Okay, so what we need to do here, we need to have a database from where we will get data from the table, from the required table. So if you want to know how to create a database in Visual Studio, you can watch my previous tutorial from my channel. Okay, so let's start working on this project. So what we need to do, we need to have a C# file that will handle all of our database queries inside it. Okay, so we need a class that will be of C# CSX type, and the name of this class, let's suppose we will name it as database handler, and then okay. So what we need here, we need to create a constructor here, database handler, and we need to create some function here, public. We need to select the data, so we will create select data, and that's it. So what we need here, we need to create a connection from this database to this ASP.NET project. So what we need to type here, we need to type first using system dot data dot SQL client, and then using system dot data, and that's it. Okay, so we need to create connection, so that will be SQL connection, con will be the object of this connection, is equal to new, and then SQL connection. Okay, so what we need to pass here, we need to pass a connection string as a parameter. The connection string, you can find the connection string by right clicking on database name and then go to properties, and here you can find the connection string. So we will copy this string and paste this string, will be paste this in the double quotation, and that's it. And we have to type @ okay, so our connection is established, and what we need to write after this, we need to create adapter that will be SQL data adapter, and that object will be SDA. Okay, so what we need to type here, we need to type query to select data from this database. So the query will be string named as query is equal to select all from database. Table name is login, so we will type as login. So as we only have one row inside this login table, so I want to retrieve all the rows, that will be only one row from this table, so I don't need to focus on where query. So I just type here select all from login. Okay, so I need to execute this query. For that purpose, you have to set your data adapter, that will be SDA is equal to new SQL data adapter, and that will have two parameter. First will be the query, and the second will be the connection. Okay, so what we need to type after this, we need to create a data table that will get all the data from this SDA adapter in it. Okay, so I will name it as dt is equal to new, again data table, and that's it. So now we will fill this data table with SDA adapter, then SDA dot fill, and the data table object here. Okay, so if the data table have some values inside it, inside its first row, that means that we successfully retrieve data from this database. So what I will do, I will check if the dt dot row, I think row, and then 0, and then again 0. Okay, so what it will do, I will explain this here. I think it is showing some errors. dt dot row, that is rows with s. Okay, so we will need to type here the row number and then the column number. Okay, so we need to convert this to the string, and that will be equal to 1. So I am checking here that whether the dt rows 0 row and 0 column dot to string is equal to 1, then it suggests that the data retrieval is successfully established. What inside this row 0 and row 1, row 0 and row 1 will get the data from this id 0 id 1. So if it gets data from this database as 1 inside it, so 1 equal to 1, and that will become true. Okay, I hope you understand, you are understanding my this tutorial. So let's proceed this tutorial, and what we need to type here, if this becomes successful, then we have here in our ASPX file, and we need to type some text field. Here we have toolbox, and we have text, and we have text box here, and what we need more from here, we need a button here. So whenever this button is clicked, a function will be called, and whenever this function will be called, this database handler will be created, and its function data select data will be called. Okay, so let me explain with the practical example. We will create the database handler object. Database handler object will be the db is equal to new database handler. Okay, so what we need to type here again, we will access this select data function, that will be db dot select data, and that's it. Okay, now what we need to type here, we will actually write this its return type to boolean, and we will return true whenever it gets data from the database. Okay, so whenever it gets data from a database, it returns true, and if anything else become wrong, it returns false, that is false. Okay, so and in normal condition it also return false. Okay, so what we need to type here, we need to get this function value in a boolean variable is selected, and if this is selected, then what we need to do here, if is selected, then what we need to do here, we need to change this value of text box to successful. Okay, so what is the id of text box? Text box 1. So we will write text box 1 dot text, that will be equal to successfully selected. Okay, so that's it. Now I'm going to run this application on my web browser, and now let's check this application whether it works or not. Okay, so the target is that whenever I click on this button, it should display successfully selected on this text field. So let's click on this button. Yes, it is successfully selected from the database. So if you want to select database and want to you want to write that database value to any text field, means you want to get that value that is here to any text field, to any user input field. You can watch my previous tutorial where I completely explain this phenomena. Okay, that's it. Allah Hafiz.